Canadians on average are spending about 177% more than the income they're bringing in after taxes, according to Statistics Canada. With Victoria, Vancouver, and Toronto topping the charts, these numbers are about 20% higher than they were in 2007. All of these numbers fall under Canadian household debt, which is money borrowed by an individual or a family, usually borrowed through a financial institution where they have limited say in how much interest they will pay or contract terms.
But what about the debt accumulated by the government? The money that the government borrows to fund things like infrastructure, public services, and benefits when they run out of tax money they get from Canadians.
In the last fiscal year that ended in March 2019, Canada's federal government posted a $14 billion deficit. It's a well-known fact that we should try and live within our means, and if we take on debt, then we should have a plan for paying it off. But does the same philosophy apply to governments?
Government debt is a bit of a different beast because it's connected to economic growth. Debt affects economic growth too. So when you have a recession, for example, it may make sense to run deficits in order to ramp up public spending because government spending can stimulate the economy, can get it going again. And that will eventually raise tax revenue too. On the other hand, if you end up having too much debt, that can weigh on economic growth.
With the federal election coming up in Canada, many are talking about where Canada stands with its debt.
I think more about whether the spending is worthwhile spending or not. Having the government spending at a constant rate means that we can kind of smooth out those bumps in the economy a bit with the government. The other thing the governments can do is to invest in things that bring us productivity in the future. So that might be infrastructure investments in new subway lines or new bridges, or it might be investing in the next generation who are going to grow up and be future taxpayers.
For Canada, it is the third year in a row that it's seeing a deficit larger than $10 billion.
The real key is how much interest we're paying on that debt. What are we paying each month?
Hodgson says that Canada, in comparison to many other countries, is in relatively good shape, but it's good to keep an eye out on the large interest the country is paying on its debt.
In terms of the federal government, they're spending $28 billion each year on interest on the national debt. That's bigger than many government programs, bigger than the transfers the federal government gives to the provinces. So you're then looking at spending more on national debt, and that's one of the reasons why we have to keep her on the ball, not let that get out of control, because it is eating up about 10% of the federal budget, and that's a big chunk of the budget.
There are many conversations around Canada's deficits, and voters will be watching to see which party they think will best manage taxpayers' dollars.